Hello and welcome to the sixth part of the series. And in this tutorial, we're finally going to wrap up on the bookings page. So let me give you a quick demo of what exactly it is that we're going to be covering. First things first, we're going to be covering and understanding how to add a new user. So let's go ahead and start off with that. So I'm going to assign a new name, last name as well. Now I'm going to use one of my other emails. And then I'm going to assign this user as an editor. We also have this user role breakdown as well for those of you who would like to check out all the features that we have against each and every user role. All right, so let's go ahead and add that user. Perfect. So let me head over to Xano real quick. And there we go. We have our user added in. Also, here's a email that I've just received as well. So it kind of tells me my email and my password that has been generated from Xano. So yeah, I'm also going to walk you through as to what the setup looks like for that. So yeah, that's that for add user. And then we're also going to walk through our filters and try to understand how the filters work alongside with our table here. So let's try that. So as soon as you'll notice that as soon as I start applying my filters, the reset filters goes from disabled to active. Let's say pending. So yeah, and then once we hit reset filters, it goes back to normal. And then we're finally going to figure out how we need to set up our all bookings. So if we click on all bookings, you'll notice that it's going to retrieve all the bookings that we have on our database. It's quite a long list as well. Also, another interesting thing to point out is that let's say that you are applying filters. So with the filters applied, if you were to click on all bookings, it's going to reset your filters. There we go. So yeah, we're going to learn that, and then we're going to set all the tiny little details for this page so that we can wrap up on this. So yeah, let's get started on that. Now over on Xano, for the add user, we are going to use the post request of auth signup. Now on the description it says sign up and retrieve an authentication token, which is something that I'm actually going to change in just a bit. Technically, we are not actually signing anyone up. All we're doing is just using this as a post request, using this post request to add a new user to our database. So as you can see that on the inputs, we have our first name, last name, email, contact number, and access level. So basically, all these inputs are mapped into the ones that we have in our add a new user booking, add a new user form. And then we have our function stack. So with the first function being get record from users, we just want to make sure, let's see what is happening here. Okay, so we're just trying to basically match the email from the input against the email that's in the database. Why are we doing that? Just to make sure that the account doesn't exist. If it does, then we're going to let the user know that the account is already in use. And then what we do is we generate a temporary password. Here are all the criterias. I think this by default, these are all the default stuff, but the only change that I've made is here. So we just want to make sure that the password is 8 characters long. But yeah, apart from that, nothing else. I just left it as is and make sure that, and I store that password inside temporary password. Then what we do is we generate a user ID. So this is the unique user ID for our record. And then we add that user into our database. Quite straightforward stuff here. Then what we do is basically we utilize that data and send that data over to the user. And in this email, they have their email and the password to be able to access their account. Now, I've already walked through this in episode 4. So, sorry, in episode 3. So, if you want to check out how to craft this entire API request in order to create your emails, I highly recommend you checking that episode out. And then lastly, we have this very useless function. So essentially what it does is we want to make sure that the send account details actually, we just want to make sure that this is passed through into our um, response. So in the response, we just want to check if the API request to sending an email has been successful or not. This is completely pointless, to be honest, but I've just added this in there anyway. But yeah, that's that for our request in Xano. So yeah, let's kick things off on Wized. So I'm going to hop over onto Wized. And what we're going to do is create our very first request. So this is going to be add user. Okay, so this is going to be a post request. And then we want to make sure that the key is there. So we have first name, last name, email. Okay, so let's open this up. User first name, user last name. Okay. There we go. User first name and then return user last name. Return user email. There we go. Perfect. So we also need to include headers here. That's because we have switched on the authorization for this. Oh, actually, we don't need that. Okay. So we can just skip that. All right. So let's reload this. Let's make sure that this is working. I'm going to add another email. That way I get to populate the dashboard, the database as well. And this, for this one, I'm going to put viewer. So let's execute this from here. Okay, so contact number is missing. Ah, yes, I have missed out on the contact number. User contact number. Okay. Let's try running this again. Okay, it's gone through. Perfect. So our request works. So I'm going to close this. Okay, so there we go. That's our email right there. Just going to close that away. And what I'm going to do is before I move on, I'm going to make sure to move this to dashboard bookings. Okay, perfect. So let's move on to our actions here, with the first action being add a user. This is going to be an event, and I'm going to make this attribute based. Okay, so let's do this with submit new user. And I'm going to run a function, and obviously we need to head over to Notion, which is this right here, add a user. Now, if you have been following this series, we've been using the same code, but with different selectors. So I'm not going to walk through this. So I'm just going to copy it and paste it. Paste this through. Now, before I test this, I'm going to actually go and set up all the actions that we have. So obviously the first action covers our add a user. Now for the second one, we're going to make sure that the add a user success and error banner is displayed properly. Set, okay. So we're going to leave all this the same, but we're going to revert back to Notion, and I'm going to copy this. There we go. Paste that code in. Awesome. So that is done. Now, the third action that we want to do is make sure that once the form submission is done, we want to reset the form. So let's do that. So once it's successful, we want to make sure that the form has been resetted properly. That's essentially what we're doing. Again, as usual, this is also going to follow a custom code. So we're going to jump over here, reset form and add a user. Again, if you have any queries, please let me know in the comment. And then we're going to duplicate this again. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to set the visibility to the loader. So set visibility to add a user loader. So this is going to be based on element, and let's switch the X-ray on. So it's the new user loader that we're targeting. New user loader. We want to set the visibility, and this is going to be visible when add a user is requesting. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to refresh this one more time, and let's add a user. I'm going to use one of my other emails as well. Okay. Let's provide this with an admin access. So let's see what happens. Okay, so we're getting our success banner. The whole form has been reset, so that's great. So let's close this and also test out that when we are filling out other stuff, let's say we leave all this blank and try to submit the form. So we now have our error text. So as you can see, the error text is gone, which is great. So that is working as well. So yeah, there we go. That's a wrap on add a user. Now I've gone ahead and I've already added in all the functions inside this folder called add a user. So we can finally start off with our filters, but I think the best way to approach the filters would be to walk you through our custom code. So if I scroll down here on Notion, so you'll notice that we have this huge code here just for our filters. Now, just to point something out here, if you're watching this video to understand how you can set up the filters for your own solution, chances are this custom code might not work for your specific solution because, of course, your solution might be a little different. But the main takeaway from here is to understand how the filters essentially works. If you understand how the structure works, then you can use that as a prompt for a GPT to be able to produce something that would work for you. You can use this code as an example to GPT, like, hey, so this is the code that works somewhere else. So based on this, could you please create that for me as well? Okay, now before I keep blabbing on about it, I'm just going to jump straight into this. I'm going to actually start off with the code here and explain what's happening, and that should give you a clear idea of how our filters work. Okay, so first we have all our selectors here, with the first selector being our parent selector. So you'll notice that it's targeting this element called table content wrapper. So let me show you inside Webflow which one is exactly the table content wrapper. In the layers panel, we have this wrapper here, which is the table content wrapper. This is the parent element that has all the information for this entire row. The reason why we are selecting this element is that, let's say, as soon as we start applying our filters, we tell we tell the JavaScript code that, hey, there are certain areas that doesn't match the filter, so we want to hide that row entirely. So what the JavaScript code does is it selects that specific table content wrapper and then hides that away. So that's why we have that as a parent selector. Okay, so let's jump over here now. Okay, then we have the reset filter. This is targeting the reset filter button, which is this button right here. So this button. So as you can see, this is the reset filter right here. And then we have a needs review filter. So we're also separately targeting this as well, which is this one right here. So it's this checkbox right here. So it's this checkbox that we're looking for. Oh, sorry. And then we have our search filter, which is basically the search that we've seen. And then we have our form field label. And so this is the form field label for these ones over here. So arrival time. So basically that's the JavaScript code um, applying our float and active class. So this is something that has been addressed in episode 1. But we're also controlling the toggling the classes here because when we apply the filters, we want to make sure that the classes are properly applied and making sure that the labels don't topple over on our value. So that's why we are selecting that. So super important to keep that in mind. Okay, and then we have our disabled class, which is disabled, and we're applying this disabled class to our reset filter button here. So if you click on this, so you'll notice that it's currently disabled. Perfect. Okay, and then we have the specific form. So this is us letting the JavaScript code know that, hey, this is the form ID where all the filters exist. So you have to mention the form ID. All right, so that's that for these selectors. Next, we have our filter selectors. This is very straightforward. So we have the filter ID. So this is the ID for the filter. And then we have the ID for our element that is the target. So, so we are dealing with booking method filter and booking method text. So let's work with that. So if I head over to Webflow, you'll notice that if I select the input here, you'll notice that this has the ID of booking method filter. And you'll notice that the options here are completely static. So our JavaScript makes sure that whatever option the user selects, it has to match the one over here. So if I click on the text block here, because the text block is the text that needs to match with the option over here. So that is booking method text right here. So you'll notice that we already applied the Wized attribute. So that's exactly what is happening over here. We have the filter, we're using the actual ID for the filter ID, and we're using the Wized attribute for the target attribute. So that's what we're doing for all the other filters as well, except for needs review. Needs review is a little different because if I take you to our Wized setup here, it will make a lot more sense. So as you can see that this is a checkbox. So this only has a Boolean value. So if it's checked, that means it's true. If it's unchecked, that means it is false. Now, if I show you the action that we have here, and specifically to the setup UI folder, we have a action here called needs reviewing. So if I can find it, well, clearly I can't find it. There we go. Okay, set needs review. Now, when we're setting this up, you'll notice that we're setting the visibility for this, and then we also separately set a HTML attribute. You need to apply this separately because if you remember correctly from episode 3, on the function stack, when we set this up on the function stack, we're making sure to return a true or a false value. So based on that Boolean value, we're trying to match this up with our filters here. So if this is true, if this element here, so this element here is true, and if you check this, that's why this is going to be filtered to only the ones that has the value of true for their needs review. So that's exactly what we're doing here. Obviously, we don't have the action set up. We don't have the filter code applied here, so it's not going to work right now. But that is essentially what's happening here. So, all right. And then moving on, you'll notice that we also have this functionality where we disable the first option for our select dropdowns. So if I take you to the main app here, so you'll notice that all the first option is completely disabled. In this context, it's completely disappeared actually. It's not there. So yeah, it does the job for us. So that's what it's doing here. And then we have our functionality for our checkbox. And then we have our functionality for the active and float switching for our input labels right here. And that's that. Okay, so we have more functionality here for our checkbox. So that is fine. We already understand how that works. And then over here, this is the most interesting part here. Observing for new rows being added. So let's cover this. So we have a mutation observer at the end of the code. This mutation observer is basically meant for those. So what happens is, let me just actually reload this. It's going to be a lot easier to explain it that way. So let's say that I have my filters applied. Let's say I've chosen restaurant. Well, actually, I'm going to reset the filter and set it to Facebook. So let's say that I have my filter of Facebook applied. Now, if you remember correctly, if I scroll down any further, my next batch, the pagination is going to be triggered and the request is going to fetch more booking items. So what we want to do and what this code ensures is that when the new items are fetched, it's also this current filter is applied to that, and then we add that into this list here. So let's do that and trigger it off. So yeah, there we go. It's triggered it off and it has applied it to that. So let's also try resetting the filters and apply that with the bookings. And because we have a lot more items, it's going to be fun watching this. So yeah, there you go. It just kept fetching more items. Perfect. Also, another thing to point out is that you'll notice that when you toggle between upcoming bookings and all bookings, our arrival status filter disappears and appears. It only appears when you are on all bookings. That's because, we have our arrival status column here, which is actually not present for upcoming bookings. So yeah, something to keep in mind. And that is that for our filters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And I'm going to add this. But before I add this, I'm going to create a filter and a folder, and I'm going to call it functions. So inside functions, we're going to create filters. And that's it. Now for the type, what we want to do is we want to select event, and then now typically we do this with attribute present, but we want to do this a little differently. We want to set this to request finishes because we want our filters to initialize once our bookings have kicked in. So let's do that. We're going to initialize this when retrieve bookings has been successful. So let's run the function, paste that code in. Let's add the condition, return. Okay, let's reload the page and see if this works now. So it doesn't work. Okay. Let's try getting rid of that. Reload this. Perfect. It works now. Reset filters. Amazing. Also, I think I forgot to address the search filter. So let me just quickly revisit that real quick. Now, if I scroll down, the search filter targeting is a little different. So for the filter ID, obviously this is quite self-explanatory. So we have the selectors search filter, and then we have the target attribute. So it targets all the Wized attributes that you have. So we can specifically specify that, hey, we want these columns, full name, email, contact number, added by, and last modified by. So yeah, you can add more to the list if you want to. This is based on the Wized attributes. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And that brings us to the end of filters. Okay, so I already went ahead and I have put in the filters into functions, and now we can finally move on to our next items on the list. So this time we're going to focus on the logout. So let's try doing that. So now we're just going to be working on miscellaneous actions, just, adding our final touches to the tiny details. And before we move on to the all bookings. So let's create that action. So we're going to call this logout. And this is going to be an element. Okay. So that is going to be logout. That's because I know that. This is going to be an on event, and it's going to be a click. And essentially what we're going to do is we are going to set a cookie of C token, and we're going to return it as null. And then we're going to add another action to this. So on event, click, navigate to, return end path, end.path. So we want to send the user off to our login page. So that's what we're going to do. Just make sure that this is correct. That is correct. Okay, so we want to make that conditional here, I believe. And the condition being that return our C token is completely null. That's exactly what we want to do. Okay, we're going to add another action, and this is going to also be on event. This is going to be a click, set cookie, and then we also want to make sure that our user ID is also null. As you can see, we only have 2 cookies that we need to clear out before we boot the user out of our bookings. Return C token. Shoot, it's supposed to be null. There we go. So let's reload this. See if this works. Okay, let's see if our amazing, both our token and user ID is null. That is absolutely amazing. I forgot my fake password here for a second. Now, second on the list we have is our hiding the manage users. Now, the manage users, if I take you to the live app, is essentially a page where it allows you to manage all the users that is currently on the database. So this is only accessible for admins and nobody else. So we want to make sure that only admins can view this. So let's head over to our Notion here. Wait, no, not Notion. To Wized, create our action. Okay, so we're going to call it set visibility to manage. Oh, you know what? I forgot to number our actions here. So what I'm going to do is, this is all going to setup UI. So 26 was the last one. All right, so this one is going to be 28, with this being 27. Perfect. So we're going to put it as element, and I know the name for this, so this is manage users, and we're going to set the visibility for this, and this is only going to be visible. And if you remember correctly, we have a separate request for get account details, and it's right here. Return details and is admin. So yeah, there we go. Perfect. So that is out of the way. Now, next on the list we have is create booking and add user. So the create booking can only be accessible to admin and viewers. Admin and editors, but a viewer cannot create a booking. So we need to make sure that we set that properly. So set visibility to create booking. And let's do that. Let's switch on X-ray, create booking button. Create booking button. This is a very straightforward operation. So this one, we're going to say is visible when it's not viewer. There we go. That's all we need to do. Okay, so let's duplicate our action and let's do the same for our add user. Set visibility to add user. Now, the add user can only be accessible to admins only, and that's it, not editors or viewers. So we're just going to change this to admin. There we go. That is done as well. Perfect. So let's duplicate this again. Okay, so next on the list we have is set visibility to our arrival status. So as you can see right now, we have the arrival status showing up, but we only need this filter when we switch over to all bookings. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Set visibility to arrival status. Let's also put in filter so that it's clear that this is intended for our filter. Arrival status filter, let's do that. There we go, set visibility. And let's remove this whole thing. And we only want this to be visible when booking type is all bookings. There we go. Now, next on the list we have is setting our arrival status column. Now, because I'm already aware of the elements and what they're called, so I'm just going to go ahead and set this up. And it's going to make sense for you as I set this up. So, all right. Let's set our arrival status background. So this is the arrival status BG. And then we want to set our style, and the style being background color. And this is actually going to be bookings v index arrival status BG color. Okay, so you'll notice that the reason why it's not prompting right now, because our request of retrieve bookings hasn't actually pulled that in, but it will do that later on. So don't worry about it. We just need to make sure that we've just set this up. Okay, so let's go ahead and also make sure that our arrival status badge has its text set up. So set arrival status text. Status text right there. So the background color is going to be color, and instead of BG color, it's going to say text color. And we're also going to add another action, and this is going to be set text return arrival status. Perfect. Okay. I think we are finally good to move on to our next one, which is basically the main one, and that is our retrieve all bookings. Okay. So this is going to be an event, and this is going to be request finishes, and we're just going to set this to get account details. It doesn't matter. We just, yeah, the trigger doesn't really matter, so we just leave it at that. So we're going to run this function. So basically, this is going to be the function for our all bookings. So let's head over to our Notion doc here and scroll down. And there we go. That's the retrieve all bookings. Now let's quickly have a look at what's happening. So this code here is responsible for setting our variables. So you'll notice that our bookings variable, which holds all the booking details, is going to be set to null as a default. And then what it does is type of booking is typically set to all bookings. No, it's going to be changed to all bookings. So initially we have upcoming bookings, but then it changes to all bookings. And then our Wiz data v current page is reset to 1, and next page value is reset to 2. And then once these criterias have been filled, we make sure that the retrieve bookings request is executed. And that's essentially what is happening. And then over here, we make sure that we attach a trigger to our all bookings trigger and upcoming bookings trigger. So in just to clarify, it's these ones over here. So if I just close this for a second and switch the X-ray on. So yeah, this is the one over here, upcoming booking trigger and all booking trigger. So when you click on either one of them, that's what the code, our custom code is going to do. So let's jump over to Notion. So yeah, so that's what this is doing over here. We attached click event listeners. So if you click on all bookings or if you click on upcoming bookings, then based on whichever tabs that you click on, we are going to make sure that all the variables have been set accordingly to make sure that you're looking at the right content. So yeah, that's what we are going to do. We're going to copy this code and paste this over here. Now, that's it. That's all we needed to do, really. So let's just reload this page, make sure that this works. So I'm going to take my time a little to click because I'm currently on a Xano free account and I have a feeling that it might time out. So I think now is a good time. Amazing. There we go. If I show you the data here, you'll notice that type of booking has changed to all bookings. So that's why this has changed. Okay, it's funny, it's weird that this has disappeared, so let's just reload this for a second. Okay, I think something might have happened in the create new booking, so I'm going to resolve that. So basically, I worked out where I was going wrong. I had the wrong selector and the wrong formula. So yeah, just needed to correct that. But so basically for the add user button, I had the wrong formula. So I've corrected this to check that the access level has to be admin. And for our create booking, yeah, so the formula was correct, but again, it was clashing with the add user. So yeah, that has been resolved. Now, that brings us to the end of this tutorial. The only thing that is left to do is to make sure that you'll notice that we have a lot of stray files, folders. So we're going to arrange all that folders. So let's do exactly that. There we go. All our functions and folders are neat and organized now. Perfect. So hopefully that wasn't too hard, and I will see you on the next one.